Internal combustion, IC engine. If the combustion of fuel takes place inside the engine cylinder, the engine is called internal combustion engine. Example: petrol engines, diesel engines, and gas engines. The principle of working of IC engine. In IC engine, the burning gas inside the engine cylinder expands and exerts force to the movable component called piston. The motion from piston is transferred to the crankshaft by intermediate mechanisms. The motion obtained at the crankshaft can be used to drive any machine or devices or perform any other useful work. IC engines are commonly used for mobile propulsion in vehicles and portable machinery. The internal combustion, IC engine, consists of frame, intake, compression, combustion, exhaust, camshaft, bearing, bush, valve bucket, valve, flywheel, camshaft, sprocket, piston, connecting rod, small end bush, crankshaft. The internal combustion, parts of IC engine cylinder, cylinder block, cylinder head, piston, rings, connecting, rod crank, crankshaft, crankcase, flywheel valve. First cylinder, cylinder block. The cylinder, as the name indicates, is a cylindrical-shaped component in which combustion of fuel takes place. The cylinder is usually made from grey, cast iron, or steel alloys in order to withstand the high pressure and temperature generated inside the cylinder due to combustion of fuel. The function of cylinder are to contain the working fluid under pressure and to guide the piston while reciprocating inside the cylinder. Next, cylinder head. The top portion of the cylinder is closed by a removable component called cylinder head. It is usually made from cast iron or alloys of cast iron. The cylinder head is designed to incorporate inlet and exhaust valves or other components like spark plug or fuel injector. Next, piston. The piston is a cylindrical-shaped component that fits perfectly inside the cylinder. The primary functions of the piston include to compress the charge, fuel, during the compression stroke to receive the force or impulse produced by the combustion of fuel, and to transmit this force to the crankshaft through the connecting rod, act as a guide, supporting member for the upper end of the connecting rod, serve as a carrier for the piston rings that are used to seal the combustion chamber from the crankcase. Pistons are usually made from cast iron or aluminum alloy for lightness. Piston consists of a frame, piston crown, top compression ring, wrist pin, second compression ring, snap ring, oil control, ring piston skirt, connecting rod shaft, bearings, connecting rod, bolts, connecting rod, cap, piston. Next, piston rings. Towards the top of the piston, a few grooves are provided to accommodate the piston rings. The piston rings are of two types: compression ring and oil ring. Oil ring. The function of the oil ring is to extract the excess lubricating oil from the cylinder walls and send it back to the oil sump through the holes provided on the piston. These holes are called oil holes. Compression ring. The compression rings, at least two rings, press hard with the cylinder walls, maintaining a tight seal between the piston and the cylinder. This is required to prevent the high-pressure gases from escaping into the crankcase. Next, connecting rod. The connecting rod forms a link between the piston and the crankshaft. The upper end of the connecting rod is connecting to the piston by means of a piston pin or gudgeon pin, while its lower end revolves with the crankshaft. The function of the connecting rod is to convert the reciprocating motion of the piston into rotary motion of the crankshaft. Connecting rods are drop-forged from a steel alloy capable of withstanding heavy loads without bending or twisting. The connecting rod consists of a frame rod bushing, I-beam, rod bolt, rod small end, connecting rod, rod bearing insert, rod cap, rod nut. Materials uses cast steel, forged steel, or fabricated steel, micro-alloyed steel. Next, crank. The crank is a lever with one of its end connected to the lower end of the connecting rod, while the other end connected to the crankshaft. Next, crankshaft. The crankshaft transmits the power developed by the engine through the flywheel, clutch, transmission, and differential to drive, move the vehicle. The crankshaft is forged or cast from an alloy of steel and nickel. Next, crankcase. The crankcase is the lower part of the cylinder block that encloses the crankshaft and provides a reservoir for the lubricating oil. Next, flywheel. The flywheel is a large disc or a wheel mounted on the crankshaft, forming an inertial mass that stores rotational energy. Next, valves. There are two valves for each cylinder, inlet valve and exhaust valve. Fresh air and/or fuel mixture enters the engine cylinder through the inlet valve, while the burnt gases are discharged outside the cylinder through the exhaust valve. Both the valves are opened and closed by means of cams, driven by the camshaft through a timing gear or chain so that the charge enters or discharges the cylinder at the right time.